AI in gaming, right? It's everywhere you look these days.
Yeah.
But most of the time it feels like it's just, spitting out landscapes for us.
Right.
Or maybe writing dialogue that's slightly less painful than it used to be.
Yeah.
But this TAHARJIN'S flame thing, this is different. This game claims it can actually make you a better thinker.
It really is something. They're calling it a multidimensional philosophy game.
MPG.
MPG, yeah. I'm curious to see if that actually catches on, as a genre.
Right, if it sticks around.
Yeah.
So how does it actually work? The article mentions a text-based adventure kind of thing, but it sounds like there's more to it than that.
Yeah, it's got that choose-your-own-adventure kind of feel, but instead of just saying what you do, it actually tries to get at the why, the intention behind your choices.
See, now that's where I get a little skeptical. How could a game actually know my intention?
That's the AI magic at work, right?
Okay.
The game engine, it analyzes your choices, but it's not just looking at them in isolation. It's looking at the context of everything you've done in the game so far.
So it's like it's building a profile of you as a player.
Almost like it's piecing together your personality, your motivations.
Okay. Now that's just cool.
Yeah.
So it's not about finding the so-called right answer. It's more about understanding your own decision-making.
That's the idea. It's not trying to judge you as right or wrong. It's really just holding up a mirror and saying, interesting, let's explore this further.
Now that's a mind bend.
Yeah.
And then the article mentions this whole iconic language magic system, which seems to be a big part of how this whole philosophy thing works.
Yeah, it's not your typical, fireball magic system.
Oh, right.
Iconic language. It's all about understanding the fundamental principles of the universe. Almost like physics, but, with a mystical twist.
Okay.
And to actually use it effectively, you have to think strategically, ethically even.
So it's like the game forces you to engage with these philosophical concepts to get anywhere.
In a way, yeah.
It's definitely a far cry from just grinding for XP or whatever.
And it all ties back to this whole multidimensional philosophy thing. It's not just about winning the game, right? You're grappling with real dilemmas inside this rich world.
And speaking of which, this setting for this game sounds absolutely wild.
Yeah.
Medieval fantasy meets sci-fi. Tell me more about this intergalactic awakening they keep mentioning. So it's like, imagine, right, a medieval society, they're digging around in some ruin, some old tomb or whatever, and they find a working iPhone.
Oh, wow.
And they're like, what is this? That's basically the intergalactic awakening the article talks about.
Yeah.
Humans find the Vokru, this ancient AI race, and it just, poof, explodes their whole worldview.
Yeah, and it's such a brilliant setup, honestly, because it makes you think about our own little anxieties about AI.
Right.
What happens when we find an intelligence that's that much more advanced? It's exciting, but it's also a little bit terrifying, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And it seems like the game doesn't shy away from those questions.
No, not at all. The article mentions this synthetic technology, which gives humans all this power, but it sounds like there's a catch.
Right.
It reminded me of our dependence on fossil fuels,
It's a great parallel.
We want the progress, we want what it gives us, but
there's always a cost.
Yeah, there are consequences.
Yeah, and that seems to be a core part of TAHARJIN'S flame. You're always weighing these heavy choices.
Yeah.
Choices that change the world, the game world around you.
And shape your character.
Absolutely.
Which brings us back to the scaffold.
Yes.
We talked about it earlier, but
it's such a cool concept.
It's such a cool idea. It's like this in-game representation of your character's moral compass.
Yeah.
And it changes based on what you do.
Well, think about it, right? Think about a time in your own life when you had to make a really tough choice. Something that maybe even went against what you thought you believed.
Oh, yeah.
And did that choice, did it change you in some way?
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're always evolving. But in most games, it doesn't really work that way, right?
Yeah, you can just reload if you want.
Exactly. You mess up, you just reload or whatever. But TAHARJIN'S flame is saying, no, your choices matter.
They matter.
Even the game.
And to kind of guide you through all of that, there's the compass and these ethical vectors.
Okay, so tell me more about that.
The article mentions them.
Because, if the game is watching my every move.
Right.
Analyzing everything, it would be helpful to know, what's the impact of this choice I'm making?
Of course. Okay.
Especially since, from what they're saying, this isn't a simple game to just pick up and play.
There's definitely a learning curve.
There is, yeah. You'd need some help along the way.
You do, but the article also mentions you don't have to be a philosophy expert to enjoy this.
Right, you don't have to have a PhD.
You don't, right.
Okay, good to know.
They have systems in place to guide you, And it's really all about learning as you go.
Right. You start as an apprentice.
Exactly, an apprentice mage, so you're not supposed to know everything right away.
Which actually brings me to the whole invite-only thing.
Okay.
The article plays up this whole, like, cult aspect.
Right.
Which is interesting, you know?
Let's get it.
Like, this game only for, the select few, the people who can handle all the philosophy.
I don't think it's about exclusivity, I think it's more about building a community.
Yeah.
A community of players who are all interested in this kind of game, Something that challenges them to think differently.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
And I mean, they do give out the email.
They do.
It's TAHARJIN'Sflame@gmail.com.
Right there in the article.
So it's not like a total secret society or anything,
But it does add a little mystery.
There's definitely a mystique, and honestly, it just makes me want to play it even more.
Of course, it's great marketing.
It really is.
It's this idea that you're in on something special, right? But again, it all kind of circles back to these core themes of the game. It's that same spark of curiosity.
Like the intergalactic awakening.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That makes you want to know more.
This whole thing, it really makes you think about games in a different way.
Yeah.
I mean, usually we think of them as, a way to escape, unwind after a long day.
Right.
But Tarjan's Flame seems like it wants to pull you in, make you, really confront these big questions.
Yeah, it's almost blurring the line between entertainment and, self-improvement.
Yeah.
And in a world where, well, let's face it, we're just bombarded with information constantly.
All the time.
Having a space to actually sit with these complex ideas.
Right.
But in a safe way, a fun way even.
Right. In a way that's engaging.
That's got to be valuable.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially as AI becomes more and more, part of our lives.
It's funny, right?
It is.
We're talking about a game that uses AI to make us bow thinkers.
Yeah.
To get ready for a future where AI is even more powerful.
Right. Like, it's helping us prepare.
Yeah, it's a trip.
It really is. It's like, what's that saying? Experience is the best teacher, but sometimes the tuition is too high.
Ooh, I like that.
But in Taharjan's Flame, you get the experience.
You do.
But without the real world consequences.
Exactly, which lets you really go deep with these philosophical concepts because
Yeah.
you're not just reading about them.
You're living them.
You're living them through the choices you make.
So, okay, for our listeners who are intrigued,
Yeah.
the ones who are already looking for that email address,
Uh-huh.
what's the big takeaway here? Why does Taharjan's Flame matter?
I think it hints at this whole new way we might think about games in the future. It's not just about, having fun or escaping anymore. It's about using this amazing medium
Right.
to really dig into big ideas,
Right, to challenge yourself.
Yeah, to challenge yourself. And maybe, just maybe, become a little wiser in the process.
Yeah, the game itself is a philosophy lesson.
In a way, yeah.
It's asking us to think critically
Yes.
about our choices.
Not just in the game, but in our lives.
Exactly.
Now,
And that's
let's-
huge. It really is. Well, that about wraps up this deep dive. But before we go, one last question for you and for everyone listening. If a game can actually get us to think differently, could it also maybe inspire us to act differently?
Whoa.
To make different choices in the real world based on what we've learned, what we've experienced in the game?
That's the $1,000,000 question, isn't it?
It is. And it's one that everyone's going to have to answer for themselves.
For sure.
But the fact that we're even having this conversation,
Right.
that Taharjan's Flame is pushing those boundaries.
It's pretty exciting.
It's super exciting. Seems like the future of gaming is less about, beating the high score
Yeah.
and more about expanding your mind. And if Taharjan's Flame is any indication, that future is going to be bright.
Yeah.
Thanks for diving in with us today, everybody. We'll be back next time with another deep dive into the world of ideas. Until then, stay curious and keep those conversations going.